2, 3. Is this thing working? Okay. This is DM Nell, and I'm back with another episode of Tonight We Game! Why do I say it like that? I don't know. It's just how I think about it in my head whenever I email that out, or not email, but post that in Discord on game day. That's what I do. And I talk about that in my first video, in my first Tonight We Game video. Why do I use that phrase on game day? To incite excitement and anticipation for the night's game. So that's why I call this video series Tonight We Game. And tonight, or today, I am going to talk some more about something I've talked about in my last couple of Tonight We Game videos, and that is the Shadowdark RPG. You're probably hearing a lot about Shadowdark in other videos if you follow a lot of the same content creators that I follow. Pretty much everybody in the TTRPG spheres is doing a video on Shadowdark, or many videos on Shadowdark. My intention for doing videos on Shadowdark is to talk about it from the perspective of somebody who's running it, not just to talk about it because it's a fashionable thing to talk about. So I've been running this now about once a month since March of 2023. So I've got about 10 sessions under my belt, give or take. And I play in person with my group of friends that I've been doing TTRPGs with since junior high. Yeah. Many moons ago. And so we play face to face, and I like to use models. I like to use maps. It's a very physical game. So I thought Shadowdark would be a great game for this group. This group that I played with, I've DM'd many different games. Our go-to is usually Dungeons and Dragons, but I've gone through D&D with them through many iterations. 5th edition is fine, but what I find with 5th edition is that it is a bit crunchy for my gaming group. And a lot of the folks in my gaming group like fairly simple mechanics. They don't want to get into a whole lot of details. They don't do any homework in between sessions. They just want to get to the game, level their character up, do adventuring, kill monsters, take their stuff. And, there's not a whole lot of in-depth character development generally. And so, D&D 5th edition is fine for that. But I wanted something a little bit more basic. And I've been looking into a whole lot of different games. In fact, I've got several on my shelf right here. I've got Old School Essentials. I also have Basic Fantasy Roleplay. And then, I saw the Kickstarter for Shadowdark. I downloaded the Quick Start, which really convinced me to go in with the Kickstarter, because the Quick Start is basically the game. You've got all you need to play the game in the Quick Start rules. At least through, I would say, the first couple of levels of the game. And then, of course, if you want to expand that, then you would need the core rules. But the game itself is, the quick start rules are really good to get you started on the game, which is what I used to start the game with my adventuring group. And then when I got the final PDF for the game, it just helped me to expand it. So I've been running this since, like I said, spring of 2023, and I have found it to be a good fit for this particular group. Now, it's not, as far as a game system for groups that like in-depth role-playing and stuff like that, it's still a good system. I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit, but for this particular group, like I said, they're not really deep into role playing. They like to, mostly caricatures at the table, which I'm totally fine with. It's we have a blast, we have fun, so that's all that matters. But for groups that are more serious into character development, role playing, getting, in-depth experience in that regard, this game does not prevent that. Now, does it support it? Yeah, kind of, sort of. It's not really. It doesn't have a whole lot of mechanics that encourage the role playing, pillar. So I wouldn't say this would be your go-to for that purpose. Is this a dungeon crawl RPG? Absolutely, absolutely. This is a dungeon crawl RPG. Can it be outside of a dungeon crawl? Absolutely. I've had adventures with my group that were not in a dungeon. Is it optimized for dungeons? Yes. Will it probably be expanded out of that? I'm guessing, yeah, it probably will be. So the Arcane Library is a great place to go to for updates, as well as the Kickstarter. If you got into the Kickstarter, so there's really not. I mean, except for the fulfillment of the Kickstarter, which just finally fulfilled here within the last couple of weeks, and I'm filming this or recording this in what is today? February. We're in February of 2024, and it's just fulfilled a couple of weeks ago for me is when I got my book, and I also ordered the DM screen, which is interesting. Here's the DM screen is small, as you can see, compared to a normal size book, which is really, really, I like it a lot because most GM screens I can't even see over. Once you put it on the tabletop, it kind of obscures the the map and the miniatures that are directly in front of it. So this one is smaller. Of course, being smaller means it doesn't have as much on it as a regular GM screen might have. And the stuff that's on here, I wouldn't necessarily have selected for a GM screen. But it's got things like NPCs, and I'll put it up here. It's got NPCs, names by syllable that you can create on the fly, random encounters, treasure table, XP charts, and random items that you can roll during your adventure for treasure. So I got that, which is pretty cool. Haven't used it in a game as of yet. I actually created my own custom map for Shadowdark that has a lot of the game rules just laid out in front of me. But I find I really don't use that too much. I really kind of shoot from the hip because the game rules are so easy to retain up here that there's not a whole lot of need to look things up. So I really find that I don't look at the custom screen that I created. So I'll probably start using this next time I run a game here next week. Also got these monster cards, which are pretty cool. So one of them was Brain Eaters, which are a Lithid, obviously. An NPC called Mazim the Mesmerist. A monster called a Crabstrosity, giant crab. And then an expansion of the gelatinous cube, ooze cubes. So there's two versions there. A heal cube and a magnetic cube. The heal cube is interesting. It actually heals creatures that it engulfs. So it'd be funny to put one next to a regular one. This also has a necrotic cube, so there's 3 on this card. That's pretty cool. Okay, so anyway, got that with my core rule book. There's some other stuff that you can get. So if you go to the Arcane Library web store, you can get the core rule book, which is for sale, or not for sale. It's for sale, not on sale, but it's for sale for $59 on the Arcane Library website. And I would suggest if you're interested in getting a physical copy of the book, I would suggest you doing it fairly quickly. I think these will sell out pretty fast. The premium book sold out pretty quickly. I'm not sure there's a difference between the regular book and the premium book other than the fancier cover. But I like the cover for the regular book, so I'm good with the regular copy. Then you can also order the Cursed Scrolls. in print and PDF. So again, these will probably go pretty quickly. So if you're interested, I was not initially interested, so I didn't get the Cursed Scrolls initially, but a friend of mine who went into the Kickstarter did, and he gave me the physical Cursed Scrolls. Of course, I had purchased the PDF Cursed Scrolls, and I had those, but once I started reading through those, I thought, oh, these are pretty cool. And luckily, my friend got the physical copy, gave those to me, and I really liked them. Again, they're about the same size as the GM screen and also the core rulebook. They all share the same condensed size. And the Cursed Scrolls are really mini campaign books. They have a setting, they have new classes, and sometimes new equipment, sometimes new monsters, and sometimes an adventure. So the first one has the Diablerie, and it features an adventure in a region called the Gloaming. If you're interested in learning more about that, Mike Shea from Sly Flourish is actually running that campaign. Of course, he's adding his own stuff to it, because what these provide is really the backbone of a campaign. It doesn't really provide you a full fleshed out campaign like an adventure path would, but it gives you just enough so that you can create a campaign based out of the skeleton of a campaign that these books provide, which I love. I love that idea. Of course, that means more work for you, but I'm cool with that. So at any rate, I got the Cursed Scrolls, and the first one is the Diablerie. The second one is the Red Sands, and it features a desert setting. And this could be something that you could use to emulate other campaign settings, such as Dark Sun or Al-Qadim, if you're a second edition fan of D&D. So, there's a desert setting here, and then the third Cursed Scroll has a Nordic themed setting called the Midnight Sun, which all three are very interesting, and yeah, I wouldn't mind running all three of them at some point. So that is what you get, or that's what you can get in the web store. So you can also get the Quick Start rules with a starter set of adventurers, first, I believe it's 0 level and first level adventurers. You can also just get those separately. There's 12 first level adventure character cards here. They're card stock, and if you're running Shadowdark in for the first time with your group and you just want to give them pre-made characters, this would be a great purchase for that. Or if you're using it for campaign play, if you're going to run Shadowdark in campaign play, if you are doing a convention, is what I tried to say, convention play, and you're interested in running Shadowdark, these are great. You can just hand these out in a convention, and pre-made characters, you can just go from there. Again, you can get the GM screen. There's also pre-made mini adventures on a similar size card. So you have a map of the adventure and you have an adventure description, all on one page. I didn't get those. I'd like to get those. And I would like to get those before they sell out. So I should probably do that. Do that. If you're also just wanting this stuff in PDF, you can get it cheaper in just PDF. Anyway, excuse me, I have the hiccups now. This is all stuff that you can find in the Arcane Library web store for the Shadowdark RPG. Okay, so going back to my personal game. So, like I said, I've been running this since last spring. And it's been a learning experience, of course. It's a brand new RPG. And what you'll find initially when you're running the game is that a lot of the rules are written in the core rulebook at a fairly high level. It doesn't go into a whole lot of details. It's not something that every little thing is explained in every little detail. There are some things that you're going to have to make rulings on. And so this, for example, there's no list of conditions. So if you have a spell that petrifies somebody, you're going to have to figure out what that means. If you have a spell that poisons somebody, you're going to have to figure out what that means. Is it just the initial damage that the spell causes, or is there going to be an ongoing, lingering effect? That's something as a DM you're going to have to adjudicate. And so that's one of the things I found out as you run a Shadowdark campaign. Another thing is that you need to read what is spelled out in the rules very carefully. I made the mistake of misinterpreting one of the spells, protection from evil, which with my initial read through, I assumed that protection from evil, which has a range of near, protected everybody in a range of near. That's not the case. It protects one person within the range of near. That's a big difference, because for the first 4 levels of my campaign, so for the first 5 or 6 months of play, maybe 7 months of play, we had 2 clerics or 2 priests, and they were using protection from evil all the time, and that was imposing disadvantage on all of the chaotic creatures. And since I had adjudicated that as meaning that it protected everybody in a near range, the entire party basically would just huddle together. They would all be protected from evil, which means disadvantage on all of my chaotic creatures' attack rolls, which meant that I was never hitting anyone. So that was a misread on my part. And after going back and rereading it, consulting the Discord channel, which has a great community, by the way, and understanding that spell only affects one creature, not all the creatures within the near, that totally changed my game. So that's why in my current game, most of the characters that I have in my game are still the same characters from the beginning, because of that one misreading of that one spell. So again, be very cautious when you're reading and adjudicating rules in this game, because one misreading or one misinterpretation of the rules can screw things up for you. But now that I'm back on track, I'm having a better time than I did when I first started the campaign, because now my monsters are actually a threat, whereas before they were not a threat. Okay, so at any rate, that's one of the learnings that I had from my game. I also learned that I don't like the XP system. I don't like awarding XP based off of treasure. The reason I don't like it is because I have to... well, there's 2 reasons, right? The first reason is because the incentive to go into dungeons for treasure means that you have to have treasure in a dungeon that is significant enough for the incentive to be meaningful. Which means if you've got a group of, like I have a group of 9, potentially 9 players, at any given time I could have 9 people at the table, but I average around 5 or 6 at any given time. Even so, 5 or 6 characters, you have to put a lot of treasure in an adventure in order to make it worthwhile for them to go into the adventure, risk their lives, especially at low levels, and do that sort of adventuring. And then I found I had a difficult time because I was awarding based off of the tables in the core rulebook, which they're okay, but I don't love it. I find that it's much easier to award XP based off of encounters with the monsters. So I award XP based off of the monster's level. So if I have an encounter that has 5 level 1 monsters in it, and they defeat all 5 of those monsters, that's 5 XP that they have accumulated. If they have 2 second level and 5 first level creatures in an encounter, then they get 4 XP for the 2 second level monsters, and they get the 5 XP for the 5 first level monsters. So that's pretty much how I do XP, and it's much easier for me to divvy out XP in that regard. So that means that I have to change the purpose for adventuring from solely treasure based to also monster hunting, because monster hunting is what gets them the XPs, which is fine because my players enjoy combat. They enjoy the fights, and therefore I like to give them lots of fights. And so changing the XP awards from a treasure based system to a monster based system is better for me. Now, is it better for you? I don't know. You do you. But the core XP system is not something that I kept. The torch timer thing is something I'm having a really hard time wrapping my brain around. I forget when we have torches going. I forget when they started. I forget to set a timer. I forget to remind the players to set a timer. So that kind of goes by the wayside for me. It's not something that I'm used to, and quite frankly, I find it kind of to be a pain in the butt. I think this would work much better if I ran my game in a virtual tabletop. That way I could, set a timer on my computer to coincide with the torch or whatever the light source is. And, the virtual tabletop has lighting, dynamic lighting, so you can actually show the area of effect for the torch. And then once it goes out, you can definitely see the impact that has for the players not having light in a dungeon, whereas on a tabletop, unless I turn out the lights in the room, it's not going to have the same impact. It's not going to have the same effect. The players are still going to be able to see all the monsters and the layout of the map and everything on the table, even though it's supposedly dark. So it doesn't have quite that same oomph in physical play as I think it would in a virtual tabletop. So the torch timer thing, not working for me. As I think I mentioned in my last couple of videos, I also changed the magic system. I stole the magic system from Dungeon Crawl Classics, in that if the character rolls a fail on their caster check, it they don't lose the spell, but they increase the critical failure threshold by 1 point for every failed spell that they try to cast. So the critical fail threshold starts off at 1, right? If you roll a natural 1, that's a critical fail. If you fail to cast a spell, but you don't roll a 1, then that increases that critical fail threshold from 1 to 1 and 2 on a die roll. And so that increases every time you fail casting a spell. So the more spells that you fail to cast, you're increasing that threshold that the next time you cast a failed spell, or you fail to cast a spell, that it's going to count as a critical failure, in which case you have to roll either on the miscast table if you're a wizard, or you have penance that you have to pay if you're a cleric. And once it counts as a critical failure, that's when you lose a spell for the rest of the day. So that is my homebrew magic system, which again is not really homebrew. It's just stolen from Dungeon Crawl Classics, which I'm not really sure why she didn't do, why she, being Kelsey Dion, who wrote the game, why she didn't just take that whole system carte blanche and port it into Shadowdark. But I do know, in some regards, the magic system in Dungeon Crawl Classics is way more complicated than Shadowdark. But as far as the spell you roll to cast mechanic, I think she could have done a little bit more with that in Shadowdark. But at any rate, that's something that I did in my campaign to modify the magic system. So something that I'm hearing in a lot of the other videos from people that have reviewed Shadowdark is there's some talk about whether Shadowdark can be used for an ongoing campaign. And some people are saying that due to the deadly nature of the game, you can't really run a long-term campaign. And I'm going to say that that's not necessarily the case. I think that Mike Shea on Sly Flourish, again, not to tout him too much, but he is running a campaign, and he's doing an extremely good job of it. He has identified an issue with long-term campaigns that stem from the fact that he likes to run story-based campaigns. So if you watch the Sly Flourish web channel at all, you'll know that he runs Dungeons and Dragons. He mostly likes to run the official WotC adventure paths. So he's run everything from the very first adventure path. What is that? Rise of Tiamat. He's run Storm King's Thunder, Princes of the Apocalypse, Tomb of Annihilation. He's run all those. And those are all very story-based and very character-based adventure paths. So that's what he typically runs in D&D. He acknowledged that he can't really do that in Shadowdark because of the fact that that characters die so easily in Shadowdark, at least at lower levels. And I think his campaign is kind of around the fourth level, but he's still killing off characters pretty regularly, even at fourth level. So he's a pretty brutal DM compared to me, at least. But again, I had that protection from evil issue that I was dealing with. But anyway, but even so, he's still running a cohesive story-based adventure, but he's finding it difficult to do that. Mostly from bringing in new characters and having those new characters invested in the storyline that brought the PCs into the adventure to begin with, whatever that adventure, whatever part of the campaign that they're currently in. So he's finding it hard to bring in new characters and have them, have the same motivations. So that can be a problem in Shadowdark if you are running an ongoing campaign. I think that the solution in Sly Flourish, Mike Shea speaks to this as well in his videos. The solution is to have the adventure be the hook itself, and not have individual character hooks, because again, the individual characters may or may not survive, to any appreciable level in the campaign. So you can't have the campaign based off of character motivations. Rather, the motivations have to be centered around the adventure itself. And so Sly Flourish suggests that in order to do that, you have factions that your player characters are part of, and the factions have a vested interest in what's going on in the campaign. And so your characters from the various factions, the motivation is built into whatever faction that your character is part of. And so any new character that's rolled up determines what faction they're part of, and then presumably their reason for going into that adventure aligns with whatever reason that that faction has for wanting that adventure to be undertaken. So, and I agree with that. I haven't done that in my campaign. Again, my campaign is basically, not had a whole lot of attrition as a result of character deaths. So I haven't really encountered that problem. But what I've been doing in my campaign is that I have a headquarters basically, and I'm using another Sly Flourish product, the what's it called? The Amazing, is it Fantastic Adventures, I believe is the product, the Sly Flourish product. And that has like a village that can be used as a campaign starting point, and the village of White Sparrow. And I've been using that as my campaign starting point. And the characters have a tower there that they have as their headquarters. And basically, I just whenever they're ready for a new adventure, I find a new adventure, and they just go off from there. So basically, if a character dies in middle of adventure, they either find another character in the adventure, or in between adventures, some new player and some new character approaches them to join the group, at which point, they start a new adventure or whatever. So it really hasn't been a problem for me necessarily, because my adventures have been episodic at this point and have not really been story based. There is an overarching story that I have in the back of my head, and I fed in tiny little pieces of information here and there. But that overarching campaign storyline is not, as heavily featured in my campaign as it would be in a normal story-based campaign. So I can really take this campaign anywhere I want to, since it's so episodic. It's really like Monster of the Week, Dungeon of the Week, Adventure of the Week. I can decide this week it's going to be a wilderness adventure, next week it'll be a dungeon adventure, the next week it's going to be a political intrigue adventure if I wanted to. The next week's going to be a survival horror adventure. I can do whatever I want to, and it's been very easy for me to find adventures that I can just port into Shadowdark and and make it fit. It's really a very easy system to take and to fit into whatever genre, not really genre, whatever fantasy campaign type that you're interested in running. So that's the experience that I've had. And I think that ongoing campaigns are definitely something that you can do. It's just not going to work as easily as a story-based campaign as it would in other systems like Pathfinder or D&D. The other thing about Shadowdark that I have found that I need to create my own resource for, and that is how to create a monster. So in the core rulebook, there are rules there are monsters, right? The monsters are incorporated in the book. Maybe I can bring up the book itself. But the monster book is, or the monsters in the book is a good starting point, but you can go through them fairly quickly if you are doing a campaign. And so I think that for me, I needed a resource that I could use to create monsters, either emulating monsters from other RPGs, like D&D or Shadow of the Demon Lord or whatever, or create monsters from scratch. And the core rule book really doesn't do that. So let me show you what the core rule book has. All right, so if you go down to the monster section of the core rule book, way down here towards the back of the book, here we go. Okay, so monster section gives you the basics on the monster attributes. Then it gives you a monster generator, but the monster generator basically just tells you, what level the monster should be, the quality, and gives you certain attributes like, the monster may have a poison sting or a psychic blast or does 2d6 damage for some reason, and it has a weakness. Then it has ways of making it weird, again, table-based here. And then it has the section on designing monsters, which is okay, but it's, again, fairly high level. So it talks about making monsters, determine their combat role, which is interesting because none of the monsters that are listed in the monster, the monster section, defines its role. So, an Ankeg, what is that supposed to be? An apprentice, what's that supposed to be? A snow ape, what is that? Animated armor, what role does it fill? It doesn't specify it in the monster stat blocks that she has in the book. So I'm not really sure why in the monster creation section, or designing section, it has the combat role listed out here. So, of course, the combat role can be something that's not necessarily placed in the stat block, but can inform the stat block. So, if you want a mook, they have low damage, low HP, low AC, and attack bonus, and they tend to swarm. Soldiers, they have mid-range damage, mid-range HP and armor class and attack bonus. A striker, high damage and attack bonus, low HP and AC, often stealthy and skillful. A tank, mid-range damage, and so forth. So you can read through that on your own. But basically, it helps you to modify the stat block based on the type of role that you want your monster to have. And then it talks about stat modifiers. Compare with a measuring stick, quote unquote, monsters such as elephants when choosing a new monster. Stat modifiers. Monsters can have higher modifiers than PCs. So, again, this is telling you to compare your monster to other monsters as a measuring stick. And it does that, several times throughout this designing monsters thing. So, again, this is okay, but it's not really something that you can use quickly to come up with monsters on the fly. So I had to create my own little system, which I may, cover in some other video. I'm not going to cover it now. But, I found that it is a little time consuming, and it really doesn't provide you, a monster fairly easily utilizing this system here. It's almost easier just to take an existing monster and just, slap a new name on it and change the, maybe change the damage type and reskin it that way. But at any rate, I find that the monster creation system could be a little bit more robust. It's okay. I'm not bashing it, and it has some interesting things like the randomness of the generators here are pretty interesting. You can definitely make some bizarre monsters. But again, if you're going to be using this system, you're going to have to do so prior to your session. You're not going to be able to use it very quickly on the fly. Okay, so at any rate, that's where I'm at with Shadowdark RPG. I like the system a lot. I have been using it with my group. Will I continue using it? I don't know. One other thing I'd like to mention while I'm at it is I hope that somebody creates more spells for the priest and for the wizard, especially for the wizard. I feel like the wizard should have tons of spells to choose from. And there are more wizard spells than there are priest spells, but run out of spells. And, a lot of these spells are iconic spells, and that's what I think they were going for. Pretty much stick with the iconic spells as the primary spell list. But again, you can get to the point where the magic user is always casting magic missile, or always casting web, or always casting fireball, always casting lightning bolt. And if you really want them to have a more wide range of spell lists, then I would like to see some people come up with new spells for this game. I could do it myself, but again, there's that whole time thing that you have to invest. Okay, so that's really the only other thing I wanted to mention in this video. So let me go ahead and wrap it up there. More just musings on my part for Shadowdark. Again, I like this game. I give it the thumbs up. It has a lot of good stuff in it, a lot of good features. Is it for everyone? Probably not. If you love D&D, stick with D&D, because D&D is much more crunchy than Shadowdark. But if you're looking for a departure from D&D that's much more basic, much more simple, if you're looking into the OSR type things, but you're wanting something that's a little bit closer to 5e than closer to 1st E, then I would say Shadowdark is a good place to look. And at the very least, get the quick start books, because again, that will let you actually run the full game for at least 2 or 3 levels before you need to decide whether you want to invest in the core rulebook. And that's at least, even if you're playing weekly, that's at least a 2 or 3 month freebie that you can run Shadowdark without having to decide whether you're going to drop $60 for the core rulebook. So, okay, that's it. I am done. And so I hope that you guys appreciate this video. If you do, then please hit the subscribe button. And hit the like button. And if you want to leave some comments, I'll be more than happy to look at those as well. So with that, appreciate your watching, and I will catch you next time.